All right, I've contacted hundreds and hundreds of reporters, news agencies, and never a news story. And this is just an incredible news story. I'm doing it once again. Now I'm contacting the Dallas Express today, the People's paper. That's kind of funny if they don't report this. Here's the date on it. It's December 27th, right after Christmas. And here's News Pitch. That's how they set up their site. So here's my email. How to pitch top fish. Reporters cast a wide net for interviews. Okay, the suggested headline I put in there: the biggest untold story in America, Midland, Texas. And then the topic, what I did was take the video there. I'm gonna show you on that Crime Stoppers tip for multiple crimes and murders. Remember, I'd sent that in, and I have that. I believe it's right here. No, I'll show you. I've got it in a text file. Right here, okay? So I just copied and pasted this Crime Stoppers tip right here. That was a long read, long video and all that, and I put that in there because that got sent to law enforcement recently, okay? That's in here. So that's in this section, topic under there. Here's background, you know, what's going on. I said I believe the information in this Crime Stoppers tip could solve 1,000 crimes. That's where I copied and pasted it. Supporting links, I put my Facebook and my YouTube down there, and then the source URL, and I have another file that I worked on here. And here, I spent some time on source URL because what they were wanting to look at is where you can go to the internet and look stuff up. So I put the link to the Google Maps, okay, which shows the large building in my backyard that you can't see from above ground, you know. I put the link to this news story about secret police Mike Naylor dying, you know, in the line of duty, was shot with a stolen gun, right? And you know, at the time I had a reward offered for his identity. 2 months later, here's another news story. Secret police Chad Simpson, he murders his wife, kills himself, and right at 2 months after Naylor died, once again I had a reward offered for his identity at the time. Public was never told, you know. Here's a news story, another link. Aaron Gobble, Vice President, Tabor Construction, the builder of my special home, died on the famous Clayton Williams plane crash. That was during the race for the governor of Texas. Also killed was Randy Kidwell, and his widow, Suzanne, goes on to marry U.S. Congressman Mike Conaway. Her brother, John Lejeune, used to live across the street from my home. Conaway announced his retirement after I made the video of concrete being poured behind the Home Depot store in my home. And I have a link to this old news story. This happened in Valentine's Day, 1990. Real famous because that's a billionaire. Clayton Williams was running for governor of Texas, and 5 of his executives died. One of them executives was the vice president of the company that built my home that has this underground home in the backyard. Real interesting there. Sonia Renee Callahan, one of the 10 people that I've documented saying that Haley Dunn was killed over in Odessa. This includes who, where, and how. I suspected that her stripper mom, Billy Dunn, and her Haley was at the Underground Old Show parties in October 2010, which is the reason for the blatant cover-up. And here we go. I put a link to the News West 9 story. And like I said, that was only one of them. Layla Obrian, this is a link here. It says, was the CAD programmer that I recorded telling me that she worked on these underground homes, which was called the Safe House Project, and were completed in '87 with a budget of $7.35 million. She said she worked for PBK at the time, and they also built a school here. I put a link to her LinkedIn, okay? The young previous owner of my home that died the week before the 2008 Permian Basin International Oil Show started. The Odessa American posted a death notice saying he died in Fort Worth, and then posted a second revised death notice and said that he died at his residence. A former neighbor, Marilyn Delugy, told me twice Mike died at this house. She also said somebody else died here before he did. I believe he was murdered here and taken to Fort Worth. This house was then sold to me as I was transferring into town from Hobbs to Mexico as the next unsuspected victim. They're just murdering one homeowner after another, rigging homes and killing people using these secret police. Brandy Dunn, another of the many people documented saying that Haley was killed in Odessa, told me that the murder of Cody Mercer was connected with the murder of Haley. She said that these murders were filmed and the police have the recordings. Jessica Hadley Lee told me that this was true and described the recordings as disgusting. I have print screens of this, and I have a link to a news story for Cody Mercer body being found. Okay, and so it's believed that murder is connected to the Haley Dunn murder. On October 2010, my friend Angie McGee Hurley told me about a young girl was murdered at an oil show party. Angie was leaving my home at the party in 5 minutes and be verified by phone records. I tried to get Angie to report this murder. She was afraid, said that high-level police were at those parties. Obviously, the parties were going on in the underground homes, and most likely the one in my backyard as seen on Google Maps. This young girl's remains were found in 2013. I suspected it was the girl that Angie told me about, and there's a link to the Crime Stoppers for the 14 to 21-year-old girl that was found outside of Midland. Ain't nobody trying to solve that murder. Acting Homeland Security Secretary Kevin McClellan resigns 3 months after I met Homeland Security at the Home Depot store and showed them where I believe the tunnel was located used for the underground oil show party murders. 2 weeks after meeting them, the ground was dug up and concrete was poured. U.S. Secretary of Energy Rick Perry then resigned 6 days after McClellan. I suspected some multi-billion-dollar oil companies were asking them to help cover up the oil show party murders, such as the young girl, the previous owner, and the premeditated capital murder by law. And there's a CNN link to the news story showing about McClellan resigning. On the same day, I met Homeland Security at the Home Depot store to show them where I believe the human trafficking murder tunnel was located. Vice President Pence mysteriously flew back to Washington. I suspected the real reason was because of what was happening in my home in Midland. He had been here a few months earlier meeting oil company executives, and I suspected they offered donations for help in covering up the underground oil show party murders. There's a link to the news story showing that the day that I post that story called Artesia Suspects, Vice President Pence announces he's flying to the tiny town of Artesia. Okay. Or that's the next story here. Okay. This one is where he returned to Washington on the day I met Homeland. The next story here, on October 15, 2019, I posted a story to Facebook called Artesia Suspects based on a phone call that I recorded saying a wealthy oil man from a town I believe to be Artesia was connected with the underground homes here. A few hours later, Vice President Pence announced that he's traveling to the tiny town of Artesia, New Mexico. The richest person in New Mexico lives there, and he sold his oil company to Concho in Midland for over $1 billion. A Concho safety man lives in the house on Westmont Court, where I suspected may be one of the 4 underground homes. Pence goes to the tiny town Artesia. It was announced on the same day I posted that story saying Artesia Suspects, and there was a woman recorded saying there was a guy in Artesia. So anyway, that was that. Okay, on the factoids. Or here the last section was the factoids. See, they were wanting a lot of information. Was this good? Okay. So then I threw this together, and there's more of them. I could go on and on with the dates, but on 3802 Faircircle was built in 1982. That's a factoid. First owner, Randy Offenberger, gets work permit for digging a sprinkler system in 85. That's interesting because Layla Obrian said the underground homes was finished in 87. Well, maybe he got that sprinkler permit to cover up the digging was going on. That's what I'm saying there. Rene Escobar Sanchez reported missing from Odessa on July 12, 2008. I suspect he may be one of the 4 people that the Aaron Peckover said was murdered, died in my house. Mike Lawhon is suspected of being murdered here on October 12, 2008. He died, on that day. Odessa American posted death notice for Mike Lawhon saying he died in Fort Worth on the 14th. Odessa American posted a revised death notice on the 18th saying he died at his residence, confirming what the neighbor told me. Okay. The 2008 oil show starts on October 20th, the week after Mike Lawhon dies. Okay, how convenient, since in the backyard's an underground home where they're having the parties, right? The 2010 oil show starts on October 25th, 2010. This is the week when Angie told me about the young girl was murdered at the oil show party. I reported my first burglar November 9th, 2010. That wasn't long after that, okay? And my first burglary. Haley Dunn's reported missing on December 27th, 2010. That's not long after that either, okay? Because I suspected Billy and Haley were at the underground oil show parties. I report my second burglary, and this time I hear somebody in my attic on January 8th, 2011, okay? That's my second time. That time, first time I heard somebody in the attic. Now we've heard, people documented all over the country reporting people in the attic. I stopped a home invasion by putting electricity on my bedroom doorknob on January 14, 2012. A young attorney landman named Matt Hyman died of a surprise heart failure on the same day. I suspected he was killed in my home, but he was electrocuted in my home. I'm ambushed and shot by somebody under my home. My phone line's cut on January 28, 2012. That's a home invasion, premeditated, capital attempted murder. It's now proven that police were under my home that night. I write the DOJ and suggest they send somebody to look in the underground homes for Haley Dunn on December 14, 2013. Her remains were found 2 days later in Scurry County. She had been missing for 2 years, and now multiple people are documented saying she was killed in Odessa. Okay. I met Homeland Security at the Home Depot store on July 2nd, 2019, same day as where Pence flew back to Washington. I made a video of them pouring concrete on July 17th behind the Home Depot store where I showed them where the human trafficking murder tunnel was at, you know. And keep in mind, DHS is supposed to stop human trafficking, not pour concrete to cover up the murders for it. Congressman Conaway announced his retirement on July 30th, 2019, right after it happened, okay? Come to find out, his brother-in-law used to live across the street from my house. Secretary of Homeland Kevin McClellan resigns on October 11th, 2019. I suspect it's because they got caught trying to cover up the capital murder of that little girl. Okay, and then the Secretary of Energy, Rick Perry, resigned 6 days later on October 17, 2019, and he was former governor of Texas when all the oil show parties were going on. I got a feeling the oil companies were leaning on him to help cover up them oil party murders. And so there's some of the factoids that I'm sending to as I said here, and then it lets me put 10 of them fact filled. These are my new pictures I created with the story at the top. I made a video about them recently, my last video, and I'm gonna click submit. See if it goes. Thank you. Your message has been submitted on this day, 12/27. Going to the Dallas Express. Now let's see if they're going to cover up the crimes like the rest of these news stations have been. Buddy Webb, Midland, Texas.